Here on the wide open plains of Wyoming, 75 to 80,000 visitors will walk through this site. Most, but not all, are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They are families, youth and adults who come together to step back into a time when faith and endurance were needed to survive. They leave behind the styles of the 21st century and put on the clothes of the 1800s. They strive to relive a part of their history and heritage. They come to pay tribute to the Willie and Martin Hancart companies.
I hope as they come here they will remember the Martin and the Willie people and all of those who crossed the plain then. And as they relate to the stories of the people, that they can see those same types of things in their own personal lives.
The year was 1856 when those Hancart companies crossed these plains. Winter set in early that year. Heavy snows and sub-zero weather trapped over 1,000 people near here. They froze, starved, and marked their passing with over 200 graves of loved ones. Yet they struggled onward as they followed their faith.
Their faith pushed them every bit as much as they pushed the Hancarts west.
Today, these time travelers come here to experience a period of time in the life of those Hancart pioneers. They come to walk in their footsteps of faith. By 1856, Salt Lake City had been settled for 9 years. It was a gathering place for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons.
The idea of the gathering was a very, very strong principle in the church, where you were to leave your homes throughout the world and gather to Zion, and Zion at that time was Salt Lake City.
The storm of October 19th, which had stalled the Willie Company and rescuers, swept over the Martin Company as they reached the last crossing of the Platte River.
And it took them a good part of the afternoon to cross that river.
Unable to pay the toll to cross the bridge, the Hancarts plunged into the storm-swollen, icy river.
Crossing that river was an ordeal that we cannot even believe. It was cold, it was wet. The people were worn out. They were falling in the water. They were trying to get across in any way that they could.
We started to cross the river and pull our own cart. The water was deep and very cold, and we was drifted out of our regular crossing, and we came near to being drowned. The water came up to our armpits. We had no dry clothes to put on after we got out of the water. We had to travel in our wet clothes until we got to camp, and our clothing was frozen over. Patience loaded, Martin Hancart Company.
You can imagine between 500 and 600 men, women, and children worn down by drawing handcarts through snow and mud, fainting by the wayside, falling chilled by the cold, children crying, their limbs stiffened by the cold, their feet bleeding, some of them bare to the cold and snow. The sight is almost too much for the stouts of us. George D. Grant Rescue Party.
The good news.
And we're met at a place called Greasewood Creek by the rescue team. Again, just a very, very emotional experience.
The bad news was that these wagons were basically empty. They had come so far and had been on the road so long that most of the supplies that they had brought with them were by this point used up.
Near Devil's Gate was an abandoned trading post like this one, but the warmth and shelter it offered was too small for the 900 people who needed shelter.
The manliness of tall, healthy, strong men would gradually disappear until they would grow fretful, peevish, childish, and puerile, acting sometimes as if they were scarcely accountable beings. John Jakes, Martin Hancart Company.
It was decided to move to what later became known as Martin's Cove, but to reach it, they would have to cross another icy river, the Sweetwater. For many of the weary, bone-chilled survivors, The thought of stepping into that frigid, ice-choked water was beyond endurance.
There was quite a number of the brethren from the valley standing in readiness to help us across the stream of water with our cart. I was feeling somewhat bad that morning, and when I saw this stream of water we had to go through, I felt weak, and I could not keep my tears back. I felt ashamed to let those brethren see me shedding tears. I pulled my old bonnet over my face, as they should not see my tears. Patience Loader, Martin Hancart Company.
They stumbled into the cove, but unknown to them, underneath the layers of snow lay a frozen marsh. They had just stepped into a refrigerator, and the temperature plummeted. For 3 days, the storm raged.
No traveling. The weather severe. Our ration of flour was reduced to 4 ounces and 2 ounces for children, making 1 pound a day for the 6 of us. But through the blessing of our Father, we felt as content as when we had 1 pound per head. James Blake, Martin Hancart Company.
4 ounces of flour a day provide about 450 calories. If you want to make that equivalent to slices of bread, that's maybe 6 or 7 slices of bread per day.
Death had taken a heavy toll. The ravine was like an overcrowded tomb. No pen could describe the suffering. John Kirkman.
It was so cold that some of the company came near freezing to death. The suffering was fearful, and nothing but the power of God kept them from perishing. Elizabeth Jackson, Martin Hancart Company.
On the 9th of November, they left Martin's Cove, their many unburied dead on top of the frozen ground.
On leaving this morning, my brother John saw the wolves devouring the bodies that he had helped bury the day before. He tried to drive them away, but he had to run for his life. Langland Bailey, Martin Hancart Company.
The deaths after Martin's Cove were every bit as high as they had been in Martin's Cove and at Red Buttes. People were dying every day.
As they continued westward, more and more rescue wagons arrived from the valley. On November 18th, they reached the main rescue camp at South Pass.
At South Pass, there were a large number of rescue wagons there to meet them and a large number of rescuers.
Soon they began to come, some in wagons, some on horses, some on foot, while some had to be led or carried on the backs of men. This presented a sad sight to see. Men, women, and children, thinly clad, poor, and worn out with hunger and fatigue, trudging along in this dreary country, facing a severe snowstorm and the wind blowing hard in their face. Hosea Stout, Rescue Company.
And at long last, there were enough wagons for all to ride.
And their condition?
People by this time had been exposed to the cold for so long that many of them had frozen body parts, feet, toes, fingers, up the calves of their legs. Very, very frosted and very emaciated, and still only with a very moderate amount of clothing. The people's flesh is rotting off. I imagine the stench was horrible. We have rescuers who say how bad the stench was.
However, as a general thing, those came through in best condition who had strength and spirit to be most persistently active, for to sit down supinely and do nothing was to sit down and freeze and die.